Good morning. My name is Matt. We're going to start the webinar in just a moment. So we'll give everyone another minute to join and then we'll get started. So hang in tight and I'll be with you in a moment. Okay, good morning. Welcome to the webinar on working remotely. For most of us, working remotely is working from home at the moment. At Nexacu, what we do is we help both individuals and companies get the most out of Microsoft Office, Office 365, and the Power Platform environments through our training offerings in public classrooms, although they're all being done remotely. I'll talk about those later. At workplace sites, and we have some online trainings you can do at your own pace. Today, we just want to share what we've learned and what we've gathered from our 20,000 plus clients in terms of knowledge of working remotely, as this is very new for everybody. A theme through the presentation is really to evaluate what works for you. It's going to be a lot of advice and things here, and it's about trying to plot your own course. We're using GoToWebinar today. You'll see a panel on your screen. It can be expanded and collapsed with the orange arrow button there. You can select your sound devices. I'm assuming that you can all hear me. And after the presentation, there will be a chance to ask questions. You can either do that by raising your hand and I will unmute you to ask your question, or if you prefer, you can type it into the questions panel. Don't forget to press send, and then I will read out and respond to that question at the end. We are going to be spending about 20 minutes on the presentation and hopefully around 10 for Q&A, although normally, like all presentations, we tend to go a little bit over time. My name is Matt. I've been at Nexacu for a number of years now, but I've been working purely remotely for 4 years, both at home, where I am at the moment, and out of a co-working space where I'm usually located. But because of the current restrictions, I've decided to base myself purely at home. I've also been working in a globally distributed team for over 18 years. So I've had reports and my managers based in all sorts of locations and time zones around the world. A couple of my favorite applications, very Microsoft centric, is Teams, OneNote, and Power BI are my favorite apps within the Microsoft realms. And I'm still learning. So this is a fairly involved process. Sometimes, oh, I've jumped ahead one. Let me go back. Sometimes we get a little drawn into the perception. So working remotely is a combination of a number of elements, including your environment, the tools you use, your attitude and your disciplines. They're very important as well. And the nature of your tasks. Working from home can be at home, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a cafe, a library, anything that's non-regular, or maybe home does become your regular. Picture perfect does not mean, or does not equate to being productive. So the picture on the left there looks very nice, but there's no mouse, there's no power cords, and there's no milk in the coffee. I'd like to draw upon that one. So from my perspective, that's far from perfect. On the right, though, certainly we don't want to be trying to work in that environment either. So don't fall into the trap, I beg your pardon, of the Instagram-esque picture perfect. Be realistic. So how do you become a working from home or remote working guru? Well, success is actually a journey. We don't necessarily get there as a destination, and it's a very individual thing. So it depends on what your circumstances are. It's not business as usual. So when you work remotely, it's going to be different to working in your business as usual environment. That's the very first thing to accept. As we go through our journey, we need to learn and adjust. I'm still learning, I'm still adjusting as I go through, almost on a day-by-day basis. You will have good days, you will have euphoric moments, and then you'll have the polar opposites of not so good days. What can help is you can have a paired colleague or a mentor, someone in your company or even just a friend to bounce ideas off, talk about what they do, share the experiences that you have with work from home, share your challenges and help each other out. Resources. So there are a lot that you could read, watch and educate, but you really need to plot your own course and work out what works for you. Go through a process of trial and error. Try something, try it, adjust, be agile, move on quickly. Celebrate your successes, but celebrate failures. Failure is an attempt at success and it should be celebrated. Try not to over-educate. We can spend a lot of our time now watching YouTube, reading books. Get on and do it. Once you've got a few hints and ideas, jump in there, start to focus on a couple of the critical few elements and work on getting those right first. Your work environment. Now, easier said than done for some. However, these are the principles we try and stick to as best as possible. So separate workspace, clear physical boundaries if you can. I'm in a separate room, I can close it off. It's my workspace. Make sure there's no clutter. Even hide it, get it out of view, clean up. Don't have clutter and distractions. Of course, make sure it's safe. Electrical, lighting, hazards, make sure it's a safe and comfortable environment for you. So your posture, minimize the physical stress, minimize the noise, the distracting noise. You might want some background music if that's what works for you. Make sure you're in control of your zone. So you can actually control whether you have the music on, whether it's silent. So take advantage of that opportunity. Also, I'm a huge advocate of sit-stand. So I have a sit-stand situation myself, and I use that consistently throughout the day. Switch on to your workday. If you have an opportunity to switch on, it might be the coffee you have in the morning. You might go around the block and walk through the front door. Have some process of switching on your workday and importantly, switching off. So you know once you've logged off, once you're done, that's it for the day. Of course, there are situations that might pop up in between. You need to make your judgment call on that. And change to suit the tasks. Some tasks, you might be able to go and sit on the couch and read up for an hour. Other tasks will require you to be in a slightly different environment. So do adjust your environment to suit the task that you're working on. A little tip, some of my favorite tools or some additional favorite tools. I'm certainly moving myself towards a digital lifestyle. I don't like paper much anymore, so this is both for work and personal. The tools I use to help me are OneNote, OneDrive, and Office Lens. OneNote for note-taking and to-do lists, OneDrive to share all of my documents, and I even scan things in, like in paper and then throw the paper out. And I scan them with Office Lens, which is great for capturing pieces of paper and straightening up the edges in the scan. And we all can scan with our smartphones these days, or in using or taking a snapshot of a whiteboard. So there's a few similar apps out there. I also use Google as well, so Google Drive, etc. So I'm not entirely Microsoft. Ensure boundaries for yourself. So what are your start and finish times? Of course, we have some flexibility in there, but breaks. How do you get a break? How do you get out and circuit break if you need to? What's your process? So you might need to go for a wander around the block or just to walk down the street to circuit break. Or maybe you go and do the lunch dishes. Ensure the boundaries are communicated and understood by others. That includes your children. Now, of course, easier said than done, I acknowledge that. Your partner, your pets, if you can communicate the boundaries to your pets, work colleagues, managers, and customers. But be realistic as well and flexible. It's very different for everybody. We're all under more strenuous circumstances, so you need to show a level of flexibility and be more accessible than you are in the office environment. Be compatible with your stakeholders. Be aware of what your stakeholders are in terms of cultures, time zone, working patterns. Not all of us work the 9 to 5. Not everyone's an early starter or a late finisher. So be respectful of that. A little tip I use in Microsoft Teams, I use the status to let my colleagues know when they can and cannot contact me. I don't do it all the time, but if there's a particular time of day or a day where I might be less contactable, I'll make sure my status has some words in there to indicate that, so that they don't have unrealistic expectations. Connectivity and plugging in. So ensure the best internet connection. Now, you're probably going to have some level of limitation. However, the best connection is a hardwired cable into your router. If you can't do that, then you want to be as close as possible if you are using Wi-Fi. So if you're at the other end of the house, you might have some speed and quality issues such as dropouts. So hopefully everyone's got a reasonable internet connection. Also consider a backup, or if you don't have a reasonable connection, you might need to go to, say, a mobile network. So 4G, 5G is not necessary. Actually, 4G is quicker than most home internets on NBN plans even. It's good to have that as a backup, and most phone operators, you'll need to check with your phone operator and make sure there's no additional charges, allow you to do what's called tethering off your phone. And that means that you can connect your phone becomes the Wi-Fi network, and you can connect your computer or your laptop to the phone and work off the phone's data. So it's called tethering, and it's something that can work really well as a backup or as a permanent solution. Just be aware that you will be using a lot of data as your PC pulls down various websites and file uploads and synchronizations. You'll need to prioritize your internet usage. So that means that things like video, streaming and Netflix, etc., gaming and music streaming will reduce what's left for you to work with. So if you have the capacity to do all of those and there's multiple people in the household, that's great. If not, you will need to prioritize, particularly in those times when you need that for your video call or even your audio call. Security, ensure that your passwords are robust and complex. I use a password manager. I prefer LastPass, but there are some great password managers out there. Gone are the days when you can have an easy to guess password. You are compromising everything that's beneath that password if you have an easy to guess password. So it's time to get serious. If you have a VPN, make sure the software is up to date and you're using a good robust password on your VPN. That's a connection that some corporate, typically larger corporations, require to connect into the internal network from remotely. So virtual private network, VPN. And if it's on offer, do use two-factor authentication, where you'll have an app on your phone, most likely, and that will generate a code. So not only do you need your password, but you'll need to enter a second authentication factor, which is some sort of code that's generated and recycled every minute or so on your phone. So that's called two-factor authentication. Cyber scams, they're out there and they're coming to get us. So always assume someone's out to get you and get your information, whether it be corporate or personal. We have an absolute obligation to protect both to the best of our abilities. So not only the passwords, but never respond or click on links that you're not expecting. So if you didn't request a password reset and you got the email, don't respond to it. Or better, make a phone call or go manually to the website and log in. Never follow links. A lot of the scammers set up websites that look very, very much like the actual websites themselves, and they get you. And that's called phishing. They get your details, and before you know it, your bank balance will be pretty low. Make use of your smartphone apps. Smartphone apps can actually be better than the real apps sometimes, not often, but make use of the smartphone apps and start getting used to them. One of the experiences I had was I was able to do a number of tasks through Microsoft Teams and even Excel on my smartphone on the train one day. And this was quite a number of months ago. I had a colleague call me and needed something urgent, and I was able to address that and do that with them within a couple of minutes on the train with just having my smartphone in my pocket. So do get comfortable with the devices. If you are having video conference quality issues at any time, turn off your webcam, and if the tool has the ability, turn off incoming videos. Microsoft Teams can do that. That way, your webcam's not being broadcast out. You're not getting all the broadcasts coming in, and all of the internet bandwidth can be left for the audio quality, which is the more important. Communication, more is less. So you need to over communicate and use a variety of communications. Video, live. Who here has ever recorded a video? You can record a little 10 or 15 minute, second snippet and send it to someone. Audio, you can do it live or recorded. Messaging, posts and chat, forums, intranet, or don't forget the telephone. The good old pick up the phone and call someone. Be transparent and honest. You have to establish trust and you have to rebuild some trust with your colleagues because we're all now separated. Expect to work harder than face-to-face. We've got a lot of work to do to figure out how to communicate effectively, and we're going to get it wrong many times before we start to get it right more often, and that's fine. Don't forget the informal and ad hoc, the water coolers. How do you do those? You need to find ways to do those with your colleagues, otherwise we lose connection. One thing I love to do in Microsoft Teams, so there's an increased communication, is I like to save messages so that I can action or respond to those messages at a later point. So that helps me organize and figure out which messages do I need to address versus most of the messages, they come and go and I respond to them or I don't them at all. So they're for the ones that I need to action. It's a bit like a parking them aside. Meetings, I'm a huge advocate for shorter meetings. We tend to default to that 1 hour meeting and we often don't even need 15 minutes. And if you give someone an hour, they will use an hour. Make your meetings short. I said we need to over communicate, but it doesn't mean we need to sit in meetings being less efficient. So there's no need for long meetings in the vast majority of cases. Use video as much as possible. And with your camera on, it's a great communication mechanism for that visual feedback. It's almost as good, but not as good as real life. Just be aware of clutter in the background. So remove the clutter or use blurring techniques. If something like Microsoft Teams, you can blur your background. If it's fun times, you can put in a bit of a funky background, but I would err against that for more serious meetings. Get muted. Even if you are not talking, mute yourself. You may not think there's noise, but it can be noise from air conditioning, from the fan of your laptop. There could be a buzz noise that comes through your microphone. Please mute yourself when you're not talking. Record it. If you need to capture actions or decisions, record it. Of course, ensure privacy and legalities are adhered to. Sort out your video and audio beforehand. Don't be sorting it all out 10 minutes into the meeting. Get in there early. If the app has a test facility, test it or test it with a colleague, but make sure it's all working. Start on time. Attend on time. Finish before time. We need to always ensure our meetings finish 3 to 5 minutes before time to allow others to go and prepare for the next meeting or have the bathroom break or the coffee break. So we should not be running overtime, because if your meeting runs overtime or to time, it compromises the next meeting, and that's not fair. And set the modus operandi. How will the meeting run? Will questions be allowed throughout? How do people ask the questions? Are they allowed to interrupt? So set all of that up, ensure it's clearly understood, and be aware of cultures, personalities, ensure you listen to others, and use things like chat and round the table to get opinions and input. We need to be very diversely thinking when we're doing meetings. Microsoft Teams, speaking of sort of an accessibility, but also just a useful function, has live captions, and some of the other software do have this as well. So you can actually follow on, particularly good if audio is not great, or if you just like to see live captions up on the screen. Teamwork, use the cloud. So keep your files stored in the cloud, your OneDrive, your Google, your Dropbox. Good for backup and redundancy, subject to your corporate policies. Let's send less email. Now that we're all remote, we should be using other methods and techniques. So there's no reason for an increase in email. It's very tempting to send that quick email, but we need to look at the better tools we have, and we need to think better about attaching files. So cloud storages allow us to better share and collaborate within files. Check in with each other. Check in with other people, see how they're going. Be mindful and meaningful of that check-in. Help out. So make sure that you're offering to help. Sometimes people just need a little bit of help. They're a bit stuck and we might be a bit critical of them, but they just need some help. And celebrate. Celebrate the good things, celebrate the things that aren't so good. In the Microsoft suite, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint have a great co-authoring feature. If the files are stored on a OneDrive or a SharePoint site, then multiple people can be simultaneously editing that file at the one time. And I've done that with a colleague very successfully with some PowerPoint ones. We're working on different slides and we're able to really get through and also see each other's updates live. Your manager. So keep in mind, we're all in this together. So your manager may not be an expert or a pro at figuring out this whole working remotely. So don't assume that your manager is comfortable with their own working environment and that they're comfortable with you as a remote worker. Don't assume that they understand what your needs are. You need to articulate and ask for what you need and ask for it in a realistic and positive manner. Make sure you've got alternatives if you can. So if you're looking for the whiz-bang furniture and everything to be shipped by end of today, it's not going to happen. But be realistic with your manager and don't be afraid to ask. Praise them. When they do well, make sure they know. Often the hardest thing as a manager is to get positive feedback when you think you've done something well, but you hear silence. So please praise your manager, praise your colleagues as well. When people are doing things that help you work, praise them. Be prepared to rebuild trust. The trust is something that is difficult when we're all remote. So you're going to have to put in energy and effort to rebuild that trust. And a bit of a message for managers, if you're managing people, it takes two to tango. So please be mindful and do and practice and preach. And so you set the example for your employees. One thing that I do in my role is I use a shared OneNote, and I've got all of my goals, achievements. Effectively, it's a brain dump of everything I'm working on. So there's transparency in what I'm doing, and my manager and my colleagues can see that and ask questions or contribute to it as well. Wellbeing. So physical activity, very important. Go out for a walk, get daylight exposure. As we get to colder months, this is more and more critical. So be very conscious of being active. Even all that incidental exercise in the office, you need to find ways to do it in the home. One of the best advices I ever got was don't fill your drink bottle all the way. Fill it 1/3. That way you have to get up more often to go and refill it. And eat well. So be careful of snacking. The refrigerator is a little closer now that we're all at home. Make the extra effort to check in with others and do it more than just a chat. Just how are you in a message? Sometimes it isn't enough. We need to reach out to people in a more meaningful manner. Check in with yourself. How are you going? Are you being honest with yourself? It's okay to struggle through some of this. It's okay to admit that we're not having a good day. That's fine. Be mindful and present in your work. So make sure that you are at work. Turn the media off. We're in this news cycle of 24/7. It's getting ridiculous in many ways. It's important that we understand the messages, but we don't need minute by minute update. Be present in your work and seek help when you need. There are some great resources out there that we can utilize if we need help. Workplaces, family, friends, and colleagues. And you've got the great resources of things like Lifeline and Beyond Blue. And here's a website. If you are feeling you need a little bit of help or advice, go to the head2health.gov.au site, and that will link off to many of the excellent services on offer to get us through these somewhat different times that we're all facing. At Nexacu, what are we doing? Well, we are very much in using Office 365 for our operations and all of our training delivery. So we've already been embedded in the Office 365 platform. We have all of our files and intranet on SharePoint. We use Teams extensively for communication. So we implemented Teams probably about 18 months ago. And since then, the internal emails have virtually become zero. The only thing we do is we forward emails that might have come from external, but otherwise all of our internal comms are in Teams. We use OneNote a lot, both personally, lots of us use it, but also enterprise knowledge, we use OneNote. We use Power BI for our dashboards and reporting. We've created several Power apps so that we can interact with our data in a much more friendly manner, also very much via smartphones. So our trainers can pick up their smartphone and input some data points using those apps that we've created. And we use Power Automate to handle complex or mundane tasks. So we're taking that mundane administration away. Now, your workforce might just be starting in the maturity of working remotely. So just begin with the most critical few. Don't try and solve all the problems on day one. In our training, we are now training remotely only. So there's no more face-to-face training at Nexacu. And we're certainly catering for any individual and specific needs that we need as well. So if you have any needs for training, please discuss. We're happy to figure out how we can work within the current advice and limitations, and also how we can deliver most successfully. So our trainers are successfully delivering remotely because these are the tools we use every day. Our operations team are increasing the work from home presence. Our head office in Brisbane has very much a skeleton staff running now. We continue to find better ways to work, so we're still working it out ourselves. This allows us to pivot quickly and also to ensure that the environment continually changes, so we adjust to those changes in the environment. So, of course, shameless plug, nexacu.com.au or 1300 886 190 is our number. For any training needs, make sure you do get on social media. We're always sharing information that comes out of particularly Microsoft, but also just generically in the industry, things that might help you or your organization during these somewhat challenging times. We're also helping organizations with any sort of setup needs. So if you need SharePoint or Microsoft Teams, not sure where to go, we can provide some advice on that. So it is Q&A time. If you have any questions, please pop your hand up, or you can type them into the questions panel. And in a moment, I'll just go through and read out some of the questions. So raise your hand, or you can pop your questions in the panel, and I'll just bring up a question in a moment, and we'll be able to go through those in the last couple of minutes. So a question from Terry. Thanks, Terry, for the question. We don't currently use Teams. So probably more of a statement than a question, and that's fine. So Microsoft have actually offered Teams free for use. So I'm not sure what your organization size is, but you can certainly take up that offer. There are other alternative products as well. Some organizations are using Zoom's for video conferencing, so you might need to also use some other messaging products. So there's a few different ones out there. I'm not going to recommend many others because my experience is entirely within Teams. So I'm going to stick to that recommendation. But it just requires a variety of tools. The challenge is we're all being forced to learn very quickly. So I can't offer much more advice there than to sort of reach out and take advantage. There's lots of trial offers on, but certainly Microsoft Teams is one of the ones that we have used with a lot of success. All right, some questions have popped up. I'm just navigating the question panel. Bear with me. I'm opening up now. Some great questions here. So, will there be another live session this webinar? We're running them based on the demand, so we may. I suggest follow us on LinkedIn or subscribe to our newsletter on our website, and you will certainly find out whether we do run another session. So if we sense there's a demand in there, we're happy to continue to run the sessions. Also, if you have any suggestions on any particular topics for the sessions, then you're welcome to drop them in via our website contact form, or you can just message through here. So if you'd like to share the session, let me check on the status of the recording of the session. We do have a more succinct recorded one as well, so we might be able to share that out. So I'll certainly take it on board, Dallas. Thank you for those suggestions. Question from Crystal. Notice you mentioned not to click on links or phishing. Yeah, this is really important. I was a bit concerned. So you received a link in order to access this webinar, as it asked me to run a program. Yeah, so there are, this webinar platform requires a piece of software to be installed and run on your PC. The majority of the platforms do require that, so I know it's a little disconcerting. It's always a challenging one. So the question I would have for you is, did you expect to receive a notification about this webinar? And the answer would have been yes. So could somebody extract some details from you knowing you were going to attend this webinar? So it becomes less likely. If you receive a communication, so you register for the webinar and the communication mentions a specific webinar at the date and time, then you can trust that a little more. Then within the webinar, if you clicked on a link and it asked you to input your corporate password or your bank account details, you know there's something very wrong with that. And in the third case, if you were still unsure, I would encourage you to come back to the webinar organization, in that case Nexacu, and ask and say, hey, I've got this email. It's not from you, it's from GoToWebinar. What does it mean? So you are absolutely doing the right thing by questioning that. In terms of other webinar platforms, I'm not really sure. It's been a long time since I've used WebEx, which is another popular platform, and I'm not really sure about Zoom. Now, we use Microsoft Teams, and whilst it's not a great tool for external webinars, the tool itself can be used via a web browser, or you have the option to install a desktop client. So Microsoft Teams allows people to join with just their web browser and not having to install any software. So that's an advantage of that. And we can also have guests join our Microsoft Teams session. Okay, so I have broken one of the pieces of advice that I've given, which is don't run overtime. So we've gone a bit over time. We should have finished 3 to 4 minutes before if I was practicing what I preached. So I'm going to wrap up here. There are a few other really good questions that have come through. I will respond to those separately. So thank you for coming along to the webinar. I know that these times are quite nervous and we're all just getting through there. So give yourself a pat on the back and let's enjoy the opportunity to figure out how we can be more effective in our working. So when we do go back to the office, or if working from home or remotely becomes a bit more of a norm, we're going to be much better for it. In the meantime, enjoy your day, do smile, and I hope to see you soon at one of our other webinars or training offerings. Take care. Thanks.